Who remembers their first job? I do. Yeah? I thought no one was going to. I didn't anticipate that. Yeah, I definitely remember my first job. I'm originally from a small town on the New South Wales south coast, and my first job was at a place called the Marlin Hotel. I wouldn't really recommend a visit to the Marlin, not to anyone in this room. Anyway, it has a 2.5 star rating on Google, which is generous, really. The accompanying reviews describe it as a dark, dirty dive, and I think perhaps most candid of all, a pub of the lowest possible standard. I think some guy took his whole family there, yeah. So anyway, I'd only just turned 18 when I started at the Marlin, and my first shift was on New Year's Eve, busy night. And because I'd just turned 18, I not only had no bar experience, I'd never been in one before. So yeah, it was revealing. I didn't actually finish until after 3 o'clock the following morning. And by that stage, I was so exhausted, I was actually shaking. My clothes smelled like beer, my hair like cigarette smoke. Oh, I was dirty and I was tired. And when I got home, though, I sat on my bed, and just as the sun was coming up, I got a pen and paper, and I figured out exactly how many more shifts at the Marlin I would have to survive to afford a one-way plane ticket to Scotland. I got there. I got there in the end. But I was really determined to establish my independence from my parents and to explore the world beyond my beautiful but very small hometown. So yeah, that was 12 years ago now. I've had a lot of jobs since then, but I work somewhere really, really special now. It's a social enterprise cafe in Richmond here in Melbourne, and it's there that we run traineeships called Brewing for Change. Brewing for Change is a 3-month paid traineeship that we offer young refugees who are currently unemployed. Since launching in June 2015, we've worked with 18 young people, 13 of whom have completed training with us, and this bit's important, remember this, all 13 have gone on to secure employment within 4 weeks of graduating. It's something we're really proud about, so thank you to them. So our traineeship is intensive, it's hands-on, and it is the best of its kind. Unlike my experience though, our trainees are not looking for work to finance an overseas adventure, they're trying to rebuild their lives. And often by the time they come to us at Brewing for Change, they're a little bit sad, a little bit desperate, because it's hard to believe, but sometimes they've applied for 30, 40 jobs and they've received no response. I mean, can you imagine that? I think even the most confident amongst us here tonight would start to think inevitably, maybe there's just something kind of wrong with me, you know? And unlike my experience when I was young, our trainees are not trying to gain independence from their parents, because only 1 out of the 18 young people we've worked with has had any family living here. In fact, 4 of our recent graduates came to Australia as unaccompanied minors. And that's a term that's used a lot, but just think about that for a moment. It means that they sought asylum as children, completely on their own. They've survived life in refugee camps, have often been, if they've come here, imprisoned in detention centres. They've grieved for the loss of their loved ones. And if they've made it this far, it means that even this government has had to acknowledge that they've fled from their home because they were quite simply children who were in fear for their life. Never since World War II have there been so many people displaced. And the Nairobi-born poet, Warsaw Shire, poignantly and powerfully describes the desperation of those seeking refuge when she writes that no one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. Yeah? Just think about that. And a fortunate few make it to safety, but importantly, safety is not the same thing as security. And even once they come here, for some, the struggle continues. And someone who knows a lot about that struggle is a young woman, Amina, a young Somali woman. Amina fled her home in Somalia, and she spent, there's Amina, yeah. She spent quite a significant time in what was supposed to be a childhood, it's not really childhood, but in a Kenyan refugee camp. And that meant that by the time Mina came to Australia, she was so far behind in her education that she was sent to a school for children with learning disabilities. But Amina's really smart. She doesn't have any learning disabilities at all. And last year I was running a workshop. We sometimes do workshops at the cafe, and I was running a workshop for Amina and her peers. And it got really busy. I had to get up to help, and Amina followed me up to the coffee machine and she said, "Oh, hi, I've got no experience, can I help?" And I was like, "Oh, well, not really, I don't really know what you could do." And she says, "Well, I can carry a plate." And I was like, "Okay, all right." And so she started running coffees to tables. Before she left, I offered her a position at our next intake. Amina's since graduated. She makes better coffee than most people I've worked with for the last 10 years. She's now going to a really good school and she's knocking back job offers. And that's a good example of the power of our traineeship when it meets the potential of young refugees. We currently have 2 demands, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to go too far over, that we cannot meet. Firstly, probably not surprisingly, is the number of young people applying for our traineeships is overwhelming. We turn a lot of young people away. It's no good, we have a limited capacity though. And secondly, we get a lot of requests for us to do catering. In the 2 years since we've opened the cafe, we have established a really solid reputation for serving exceptional food and coffee. Should I come have brunch tomorrow, 8 o'clock we open. And even in Melbourne's competitive cafe scene, I think that what we do really stands out. So we have a plan, it's a really good one. In order to offer more young refugees traineeships with us, we're going to expand into off-site catering. For this, we need $31,000 for a van and a lot of kitchen equipment and crockery. This will enable us to, in the next few months, if I am successful this evening, double our current intake and potentially triple soon. And this is important because at the moment, we're saying no to people just like Amina who we should be saying yes to. And I imagine most of the people in this room tonight do not know what it's like to flee from my home in fear, but I bet you can think of a time in your life when you really needed help and someone said yes, and it made all the difference. Thank you, I guess that would be cutting it off.